Stop praying for blessings you're not prepared to execute. Let that sit for a second. God isn't holding you back. Your lack of discipline is. You pray for opportunity. You ask for growth. You ask for open doors. But when the door opens, you hesitate. When the opportunity shows up, you overthink. When it's time to move, you wait for another sign. What if the delay isn't spiritual? What if it's personal? What if your prayers aren't being delayed, but ignored by your own inaction? That's uncomfortable. I know. But we need to talk about it. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned a quiet lie. We were taught that faith means waiting. Faith means sitting still. That faith means God will handle it while we stay comfortable. But real faith has never been passive. Faith was never meant to replace work. It was meant to guide it. Think about it. You pray for strength, but avoid the gym. You pray for financial breakthrough, but delay the call, the application, the business idea. You pray for purpose, but refuse the uncomfortable step that leads to it. That's not lack of belief. That's lack of execution. And the tension between prayer and discipline is where most people get stuck. They feel spiritual on Sunday, but undisciplined on Monday. They feel inspired in the moment, but inactive when it counts. So they pray harder, but nothing changes, not because God isn't listening, but because movement never followed the message. Here's the hard truth: faith without action turns into frustration. You start doubting yourself. You start questioning timing. You even start wondering if you're forgotten. But maybe you're not forgotten. Maybe you're frozen. And today, we're breaking that. In this video, I'm going to show you a simple 3-step faith plus execution system. Not hype, not emotion. A system. A way to turn prayers into progress. A way to move with clarity instead of fear. A way to stop waiting and start walking. But first, we need to expose the lie that's been keeping you still. Because until you see it clearly, you'll keep praying for things you're not prepared to handle. There's a dangerous belief keeping believers stuck. It sounds spiritual. It feels safe. It even gets applause in church. It quietly destroys progress. The belief is this: if it's meant to be, God will make it happen. That sounds good. It's incomplete because it removes responsibility from you. It turns faith into fate. It turns obedience into observation. It turns action into waiting, and waiting feels holy. You don't have to risk anything when you're waiting. You don't have to fail when you're waiting. You don't have to be judged when you're waiting. You just say, I'm trusting God. But here's the question nobody asks. Are you trusting God? Or are you avoiding discomfort? Where it gets real. Faith does not mean sitting still until something drops from the sky. Faith means moving when direction is clear. But many people confuse peace with permission to pause. They say, I don't feel it yet. What they often mean is, I don't feel comfortable yet. Comfort has become spiritual language. Sink in, we say, waiting on confirmation. But sometimes the confirmation already came, and now it requires courage. We say, I'm praying about it, but deep down, we already know what needs to be done. We just don't want the cost that comes with it. Obedience has a cost. It may cost pride. It may cost reputation. It may cost relationships. It may cost comfort. Comfort is powerful. Comfort will convince you that delay is wisdom. Comfort will convince you that hesitation is maturity. Comfort will convince you that staying small is humility. But comfort is not faith. Let's make this clear. Faith is not the absence of movement. Faith is movement based on trust. When you believe something is true, you act on it. If you believe the chair will hold you, you sit. If you believe the bridge is stable, you cross. But when it comes to your calling, your growth, your next step, you pray and freeze. Why? Because action exposes you. If you step out and it fails, people will see. If you try and it doesn't work, your ego takes a hit. If you move and it's hard, you can't blame timing anymore. So instead, many believers build a safe space called waiting on God. It sounds humble, but sometimes it's fear wearing a church outfit. The lie. The lie says stillness equals spirituality, but disciplined obedience is rarely still. Look at your own life for a moment. Is there something you've been praying about for months? A conversation you need to have? A step you need to take? An application you need to send? A habit you need to break? Now ask yourself honestly, am I actually hiding behind prayer? That question stings because prayer feels right. And it is right. Prayer was never meant to replace responsibility. Prayer aligns you. Obedience moves you. Cultural Christianity often celebrates inspiration. It loves good messages. It loves powerful quotes. It loves emotional moments. Disciplined obedience, that part gets quiet. That part is daily. That part is unseen. That part is boring. Waking up early. Making the hard call. Admitting you were wrong. Following through when nobody is clapping. That's not flashy. That's faith in motion. And here's where tension builds. If faith requires movement and you're not moving, then what have you been practicing? That's not condemnation. It's a mirror. Because many believers are not weak in belief. They are weak in execution. They know the verses. They attend the services. They feel inspired. But inspiration without discipline turns into frustration. You start asking, why isn't my life changing? You start wondering, is God silent? Maybe he already spoke. Maybe the next instruction was clear. And maybe the delay isn't spiritual resistance. Maybe it's personal hesitation. That's hard to accept, but it's freeing once you do. Because if the problem is only external, you have no control. But if part of the problem is inaction, then you can change that today. This is where we separate cultural comfort from disciplined obedience. Cultural comfort says, wait until you feel ready. Disciplined obedience says, move when you know. Cultural comfort says, pray for it again. Disciplined obedience says, act on what you already prayed about. And I'm not saying move recklessly. I'm saying move responsibly. There's a difference. Faith is not rushing without wisdom. Faith is not ignoring preparation. But faith is also not endless delay. And deep down, you know the difference. You know when you're seeking clarity, and you know when you're stalling. That quiet tension you feel right now, that's awareness. That's growth starting. Because once you see the lie, you can't unsee it. The lie says faith equals waiting. The truth is this: faith equals trust in motion. If you're going to move forward, you must confront the gap between what you believe and what you actually do. In the next section, we're going to break down why that gap exists, because it's not random. There are real reasons you hesitate. Once you understand them, execution becomes less mysterious and more intentional. 2, let's talk about the gap. The gap between what you pray for and what you actually do. Because most people don't lack belief. They lack movement. You ask for change. You ask for growth. You ask for increase. But when it's time to act, something pulls you back. Something isn't random. There are 3 hidden fears killing your execution. And until you see them clearly, you'll keep praying for progress while protecting your comfort. Let's expose them. 1, fear of failure. This one is obvious. It runs deeper than you think. You don't just fear failing. You fear failing publicly. You fear trying your best and still falling short. So instead of risking failure, you delay the attempt. You say, I'm still preparing. You say, it's not the right time. You say, I need more clarity. Sometimes that's true, But sometimes it's fear wearing wisdom as a mask. Think about that business idea you keep talking about. You've prayed over it. You've journaled about it. You've told close friends about it, but you haven't launched it. Why? Because once you launch, outcome is real. If it doesn't work, you can't blame timing anymore. You can't blame lack of information. It becomes personal. So you protect yourself by staying in planning mode. Planning feels productive. But endless planning is just safe procrastination. Faith would say, take the first step. Fear says, wait until you can't fail. But there is no such moment. To fear of judgment, this one is quieter. You care what people think more than you admit. What will they say if you change careers? What will they think if you start over? What if they laugh? What if they doubt you? So you pray for boldness. When boldness requires visibility, you hesitate. You want transformation, but you don't want attention. Someone feels called to lead, to speak, to post content, to share their story. They feel it clearly. The thoughts start, what if I'm not qualified? What if people from my past see this? What if I look foolish? So they wait, but sometimes it's fear of being seen. Faith says, obey even if they don't understand. Fear says, stay small so you stay safe. And staying small feels easier than risking criticism. But every time you choose safety over obedience, the execution gap widens. 3, fear of responsibility. This is the one most people never admit. Success requires responsibility. Growth requires consistency. Answered prayers require maintenance. You say you want more money, but more money requires better habits. You say you want influence, but influence requires discipline. You say you want opportunity, but opportunity demands preparation. Deep down, part of you knows that if things really change, you can't stay the same. And that's heavy, because once you step into a new level, excuses disappear. If you stay where you are, you can blame circumstances. You can blame lack of support. You can blame the system. But if you grow, accountability increases. So sometimes you don't avoid action because you're lazy. You avoid action because you know it will demand more from you. And more feels overwhelming. So you pray for change while subconsciously resisting the weight that comes with it. Procrastination spiritualized. Now let's connect this. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of responsibility. All 3 create hesitation. But instead of saying, I'm scared, you say, I'm praying about it. Instead of saying, I don't want to risk it, you say, I'm waiting on confirmation. Prayer becomes a delay strategy because prayer is wrong, but because you're using it to avoid discomfort. That's hard to hear. But if you're honest, you've done it before. You knew you needed to apologize, but you prayed about it for weeks. You knew you needed to apply. You waited for another sign. You knew you needed to cut certain habits, but you said, God is still working on me. Yes, growth takes time, but obedience starts with a decision. The execution gap grows every time you replace action with intention. Intention feels good. It gives you a sense of progress, but intention without movement changes nothing. And here's the exposure moment. If you keep praying for the same thing year after year, but never take the uncomfortable step connected to it, is the issue really timing? Or is it fear? Sit with that. This isn't about shame. It's about awareness. Because once you identify the real barrier, you regain power. If the problem was external, you'd have to wait. But if the problem is fear, you can confront it. Here's the truth: execution doesn't eliminate fear. It moves despite it. You don't wait until fear disappears. You move while your hands shake. You don't wait until everyone approves. You act with conviction. You don't wait until responsibility feels light. you grow into it. That's the shift. And until you understand this, you'll keep living in the gap, praying on one side, stuck on the other. In the next section, we're going to redefine what faith actually looks like when it's alive. Because once faith becomes movement, the gap starts to close. This is the turning point. You now understand the gap. You understand the fears. You understand what faith actually means. Now we build the structure, because insight without structure fades. Emotion without execution disappears. Here is the system: simple, clear, repeatable. And if you apply this within 24 hours, things shift. But practically, let's break it down to before you move, you align. Not for comfort, for clarity. Most people pray for outcomes. God, give me success. God, fix this situation. God, increase my income. But alignment prayer sounds different. It asks, this about purpose or ego? Is this about growth or validation? Am I ready for what I'm asking for? Alignment removes ego from the request. Sometimes what you call vision is insecurity. Sometimes what you call calling is comparison. Alignment forces honesty. You're not asking, will this make me look good? You're asking, will this make me better? That shift changes everything. Clarity doesn't mean knowing every detail. It means knowing the direction. It means knowing why. If your why is clean, your movement becomes confident. So here's the rule: never execute from emotion. Execute from alignment. Take 5 minutes. Sit still. Write down the thing you've been praying about. Then ask, why do I really want this? What responsibility comes with it? I'm willing to carry that weight. If the answer is yes, move. If the answer is unclear, refine, but don't stay vague. Alignment removes confusion, and confusion is the breeding ground of procrastination. Once alignment is clear, hesitation weakens, because you're no longer chasing excitement, you're walking in conviction. That's step one. Clarity before commitment. Now, we eliminate the biggest killer of execution: indecision. You don't need more information. You need a decision. Hesitation feels small in the moment, but over time it becomes a habit. You start delaying simple actions. You start second guessing clear steps. You start waiting for perfect timing. There is no perfect timing. There is only chosen timing. Here's the principle: once alignment is clear, decide fast, not recklessly, but decisively. A delayed decision drains momentum. Every day you wait, fear grows louder, doubt grows stronger, excuses multiply. So here's the rule: the 24-hour decision rule. If something aligns with your purpose and values, you give yourself 24 hours to decide your next step, not months, not weeks, 24 hours. Doesn't mean you complete the whole vision. It means you commit to the next move. Send the application, schedule the meeting, register the business, start the plan. Decisiveness builds confidence, and confidence fuels execution. Let me be direct. Indecision is often disguised fear. You say, I'm thinking about it, but deep down you're avoiding risk. You say, I need to be sure, but clarity already came. Conviction doesn't mean zero fear. It means choosing action anyway. When you decide, something shifts inside you. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking, should I? You start asking, how will I? That question changes your energy. Decision creates momentum. Momentum kills stagnation. And once momentum starts, execution feels lighter. So here's your challenge inside step 2. Take one aligned goal. Give yourself 24 hours. Decide the next physical action. Write it down. Commit to it. No more mental debates. Decision is the bridge between prayer and progress. Without it, you stay stuck in intention. With it, you enter movement. 2, now we separate the serious from the stuck, because this is where most people fail. They wait to feel ready. You will not always feel ready. You will not always feel confident. You will not always feel motivated. Feelings are unstable. Discipline is stable. Execution must happen before emotion agrees. You wait until you feel bold, you will delay for months. If you wait until fear disappears, you will never move. So here's the command while it's uncomfortable, not recklessly, but intentionally. That phone call you've avoided, make it. Email you've rewritten 10 times, send it. That habit you've postponed, start today, not next week. Today, execution builds belief. The other way around, you don't gain confidence and then act. You act and then gain confidence. Let that sink in. Most people, they need stronger faith to move, but movement strengthens faith. Action reinforces trust. Every small execution says, I am serious about what I believe. And here's the multiplier: public accountability. Tell someone your commitment. Post it. Say it out loud. When your word is visible, your standards rise. Private goals are easy to abandon. Public commitments increase pressure, and pressure builds growth. This is not about performance. It's about ownership. If you say you're aligned, if you say you've decided, then execute before emotion changes its mind, because emotion will try to talk you out of it. It will say, you're tired. What if it doesn't work? That's the old pattern fighting back. Ignore it. Discipline speaks louder than doubt. And once you execute once, something powerful happens. You realize you can. Realization shifts identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who wants to. You become someone who does. That identity changes everything. Let's recap the system. Step 1, pray for alignment. Clean the motive. Clarify the direction. Step 2, decide with conviction. 24 hours, choose the next step. Step 3, execute before emotion. Move even when it's uncomfortable. No hype, no mystery, just structure, faith plus execution. And if you apply this within 24 hours, things shift, because the world changes overnight. But because you do, you stop hiding behind prayer. You stop negotiating with fear. You stop delaying responsibility. You move, and movement changes everything. This is your moment, not to feel inspired, but to act aligned, because the blessing you're asking for is often waiting on the discipline you're avoiding. Now it's your turn. Now we make this real. Not tomorrow, not next week, before midnight tonight. This is the 24-hour execution challenge, because inspiration without action expires fast. Right now, you feel clarity, you feel conviction, you feel ready, but feelings fade. Why? We move immediately. Here's what you're going to do. Step 1, identify one prayer you've been repeating, not 10. 1. What is the thing you keep asking for? More discipline, a new job, stronger finances, a restored relationship, better health, courage to start something. Pick one, write it down. Not in your head, physically write it. Now, step 2, identify the one action you've been avoiding that connects to that prayer. Be honest. If you're praying for better health, is the avoided action joining the gym, waking up earlier, fixing your diet? If you're praying for financial growth, is the avoided action applying for the job, raising your prices, learning the skill? If you're praying for clarity in a relationship, is the avoided action having the uncomfortable conversation? There is always a link between the prayer and the avoided move. Find it. This is where execution begins. Now, step 3, you have 24 hours to act, not to perfect it, not to master it, to initiate it. Send the message, submit the form, make the call, start the habit, schedule the meeting. Before midnight tonight, take visible action. Why 24 hours? Because delay feeds fear. The longer you wait, the more excuses grow. But when you move fast, fear doesn't have time to build a story. You cut hesitation off at the root. And listen carefully. This is not about the size of the action. It's about breaking the pattern. If your habit has been delay, then speed is your breakthrough. If your habit has been overthinking, then decision is your breakthrough. If your habit has been hiding, visibility is your breakthrough. The goal is not perfection. The goal is proof. Proof that you are no longer passive. Proof that your faith has legs. Now let me raise the intensity. Do not comment amen if you're not going to act. This spoke to me, and then do nothing. This challenge is not about agreement. It's about execution. So here's what I want you to do. After you take action, come back and comment, executed. Call one word, executed. Planning, thinking about it, executed. Because identity changes through behavior. When you act, you send a signal to yourself, I am someone who moves. And once that identity shifts, momentum builds. You'll look for the next step. You'll feel less afraid. You'll hesitate less. All from one decision. Before midnight tonight, take one aligned prayer, match it with one avoided action, execute within 24 hours. No drama, no announcement, just movement. When you do, something inside you will change. Not because everything outside transformed instantly, because you did what you said you would do. That builds trust with yourself. And self-trust is powerful. This is your activation point. You've learned the system. Now prove it works. Before midnight tonight, move. 2, let me be honest with you. Most of you will feel inspired and still hesitate. You'll nod your head. You'll say this message was powerful. You'll even mean it. And then you'll go right back to your routine. Why? Because change threatens comfort. And comfort is addictive. Comfort doesn't scream, whispers. It's been a long day. Start tomorrow. You deserve a break. One more week won't matter. Comfort feels harmless. But over time, it keeps you average. You say you want growth. But growth is uncomfortable. You say you want discipline. Discipline interrupts ease. So when the moment comes to act, comfort steps in to protect you. And protection feels safe. Safe doesn't build strength. Now let's go deeper. It's not just comfort. It's ego. Your ego wants to look capable without risking failure. Your ego wants progress without looking foolish. Your ego wants success, but not the possibility of embarrassment. So instead of trying and failing, you delay and preserve your image. You stay in the planning phase. You stay in the almost phase. You stay in the on-day phase. Because as long as you don't try, you can pretend you would have succeeded. That's ego protection. And it's subtle. You tell yourself. But wisdom doesn't hide. Wisdom prepares and moves. Ego prepares and postpones. Comes the spiritual excuse loop. This is the most dangerous one. You feel the need to act. But instead of acting, you pray again. You feel nervous. So you ask for another sign. You feel uncertain. So you wait for more peace. Peace becomes your delay tool. You say, I just don't feel settled yet. But sometimes you're not supposed to feel settled. Sometimes growth feels stretching. Sometimes obedience feels risky. And sometimes the discomfort you feel isn't a red light, it's resistance. If every decision feels calm and easy, you're probably staying in familiar territory. But calling often feels bigger than you. That doesn't mean stop, it means grow. Here's the truth most won't admit. Staying the same is easier than becoming new. New habits require effort. New standards require discipline. New identity requires courage. And courage is rare. So most people choose familiar frustration over unfamiliar growth. They complain about being stuck while protecting the behaviors that keep them there. That's hard to hear. But if you don't confront it, you repeat it. Now, here's the identity challenge. Are you someone who consumes motivation? Or someone who converts it? Are you someone who agrees with truth? Or someone who acts on it? Because there's a difference. Agreement feels good. Execution changes lives. And right now, you're standing at a fork. You can close this video, feel inspired, or you can disrupt the pattern. You can become the rare one, the one who acts before emotion fades, the one who moves before fear grows, the one who treats conviction like instruction. Most won't, but you don't have to be most. The question is simple: will you protect your comfort, or will you protect your calling? Because you can't keep both. What you choose next reveals who you really are becoming. 2, you don't need more blessings. You need a new standard. That's settled. Because most people are not stuck due to lack of opportunity. They're stuck due to identity, according to who you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who tries, you will try. If you see yourself as someone who struggles, you will struggle. If you see yourself as someone who waits on the right moment, you will always wait. But when you shift identity, behavior follows. This is where transformation becomes stable, not emotional, not temporary, identity-based. Right now, many believers see themselves as hopeful, faithful, prayerful, patient. Those are good qualities, but incomplete, because there's another identity available: executor. An executor doesn't just believe, they build. They don't just pray, they prepare. They don't just hope, they move. And here's the powerful shift: discipline is worship. Not just singing, not just words, just emotion. Discipline: waking up when you said you would, keeping your word when no one checks, finishing what you started. Consistency honors what you say you believe. When you treat discipline as punishment, you resist it. When you treat discipline as worship, you respect it. Every time you follow through, you're saying, I value the calling on my life. Every time you execute, you're saying, I don't take my purpose lightly. Action becomes obedience, not hustle, not ego, obedience. And obedience builds trust. Trust with yourself, trust with the process, trust with God, because now your prayers and your patterns match. That alignment creates peace, passive peace, active peace, the kind that says, I'm doing my part. And that feeling is powerful. Now let's think long term. If you execute one small action today, that's good. But if you become someone who executes daily, that's transformation. This isn't about a single 24-hour challenge. It's about raising your standard. Your new standard is simple. When aligned, I move. When I feel like it. Not when it's convenient, when aligned. Executors don't wait for applause. They don't need perfect conditions. They don't negotiate with every emotion. They decide. Then they act. Repetition shapes identity, and identity shapes destiny. Here's the stabilization moment. You don't need to become extreme overnight. You don't need to flip your whole life in 1 week. You need consistency. Small, aligned. That's how passive believers become disciplined executors, not through hype, through habit. So from this point forward, ask yourself a new question, not do I feel inspired, but what would an executor do right now? That question simplifies everything. If you're tired, what would an executor do? If you're nervous, what would an executor do? If you're unsure but aligned, what would an executor do? Then do that, even if it's small, because small aligned action builds massive confidence over time. And confidence built through action is unshakable. It's not loud, it's steady. Now imagine yourself 6 months from now, not with more wishes, with more execution, more completed tasks, more uncomfortable conversations handled, more promises kept. That version of you is not lucky. That version of you is disciplined. Version of you decided to raise the standard. And here's the truth. Once your identity shifts, old excuses feel foreign. You stop saying, I'll try. You say, I will. You stop saying, maybe later. You say, when. You stop waiting for permission. You move with purpose. That's maturity. That's growth. That's faith in motion. You are not powerless. You are not waiting on the perfect moment. You are not lacking potential. You are building a new identity. From passive believer to aligned executor, from hesitant to decisive, from inspired to disciplined. And once that shift locks in, your life stops depending on motivation. It depends on standard. And standards, when lived daily, change everything. This is who you are becoming. Not someone who hopes for change, someone who builds it. Let's close this the right way. We started with a hard statement. God isn't blessing you because you're not executing. That line was never meant to shame you. It was meant to wake you up, because the real issue was never lack of faith. It was misunderstanding faith. We exposed the lie. The lie said faith means waiting. The truth says faith means movement with alignment. We uncovered the execution gap, not because you're incapable, because fear was hiding in plain sight. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of responsibility. Those three fears quietly slowed you down. And instead of calling them fear, you called it waiting on God. That's the loop. Pray. Feel conviction. Delay. Pray again, but now you see it. And once you see it, you can break it. Then we built the system. Step 1, pray for alignment, clear direction. Step 2, decide with conviction. The 24-hour decision rule. Step 3, cute before emotion. Move even when it's uncomfortable. Simple, but powerful. And now it comes down to one thing: choice. Information does not change your life. Action does. You can agree with every word in this video and still stay the same. Or you can apply one principle and shift your trajectory before midnight tonight. That deadline was not random. It was designed to break delay, because delay feeds doubt and speed builds courage. Right now, you are at a line. On one side is your old pattern, overthinking, waiting, negotiating with comfort. On the other side is movement, aligned, decisive. The difference between those two lives is not talent, it's standard. What standard will you live by? Will you continue to define faith as emotion? Or will you define it as obedience? Will you continue to protect your comfort? Or will you protect your calling? You don't need another sign. You don't need another message. You don't need more confirmation. You need alignment and action. That's it. And here's the reframe you must carry with you. God isn't withholding your blessing. Not because he needs it, but because you do. Movement builds strength. Movement builds confidence. Movement builds capacity. The blessing you're asking for requires a version of you that executes. So the real question is not, when will it happen? The real question is, who must I become to handle it? That's the shift. Stop focusing only on the outcome. Focus on the standard. If you raise your standard, your results will follow. If you raise your standard, hesitation weakens. If you raise your standard, excuses lose power. You are not behind because of fate. You are behind where you refuse to move. But that can change today, not through hype, through one aligned step, and then another, and another. Faith plus execution, not passive belief, active obedience. That's how the gap closes. That's how momentum starts, how identity transforms. So here is your final charge. Do not let this be another video you agree with. It be the moment you decided differently. Before midnight tonight, move. And when you do, don't just say you felt inspired. Say you executed. Because once you become someone who executes, you stop waiting for blessings and start walking into them.